And I did not want to live my life on survival mode. I didn't want to live my entire life just penny pinching, just getting $50 and spending it on food and get another one and spend it on food, and that becomes the circle of your life. I went from the student who struggled, who was rejected endlessly, to graduating as overall best out of about 20,000 students.
You're in the United States of America at university, a new country, new culture, alone. Something changed, something happened. What was it?
Oh, well.
Man, I want to say thank you again for coming on to Long Story Short podcast and sharing your part of your journey on my platform. I am so very honored because obviously we've had a conversation and, I've heard it in its extent and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a personal journey that I definitely want my listeners to hear, to be empowered and to know that they can get through the twists and turns of life. So before we start, a key question that I always ask my guests is, who are you at the core? Who is Amaka?
If I'm going to describe myself with one word, I would say I'm resilient. And then another word I'll use to describe myself is happy, intentionally happy. So at the core of my person is someone who have come to recognize that in life you can only control so much. And in that recognition, I realized that what I can control, I want to give it my best. So I live every day as though it's my last. So I'm happy, I'm resilient, I project my joy to other people, I carry my big energy. I want the people who come around me to feel lighter. Anybody who encounters me, I want you to feel better because you met me. So I'm the kind of person that will shout out a compliment to a stranger. I'm the kind of person that will want to brighten your day. I just want to say something nice to you. I want to put out all of those kindness into the world because I know it makes a lot of difference. Because of what I've lived through, I've come to realize the power we hold as human beings for other human beings. So at my core, I'm just a person who has come to understand life a little bit differently. And then I live more intentionally, being happy every day, just knowing that all I need to do in life is my best. And if I've given my best, it better be good enough for you. And if it's not, sorry. As long as I've given my best, I'm happy. You just have to be too. Yeah. So that's the simple answer for me. Happy, resilient.
Happy and resilient, but I think it's so powerful because being happy is a choice, isn't it? We have a choice to be happy or sad. Which are you, or which path are you going to go down on this particular day? And resilient. I'm so glad that you mentioned resilience because this is what this podcast is about. It's about resilience. It is about how people have navigated life's twists and turns. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that. So if we just go back to childhood, because this is the route, we're going to go back to childhood and then come back again. Do you know what I mean?
All right.
So
Let's
where
go
was
on
you
that
born? Where did
journey.
you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in Nigeria. It's called Jos, Jos. So that's where I grew up. It's Jos, Plateau State, Nigeria. So it's actually one of the coolest places in Nigeria. It's the coldest place in Nigeria, really. So most of the time when I was in Texas, I went to school in Texas, and people will say, oh, you must be used to the heat. It's so hot in Nigeria. I say, no, I'm not used to the heat. I grew up in a part of Nigeria that is actually cold. So as much as people have the perception that everywhere in Africa, everywhere in Nigeria is hot, that's not true. It's just like every other country where you have hotter places and cooler places. Nigeria is just that way. So I grew up in this town that had a lot of rocks and mountains and big on agriculture and just a quiet town. It's more like the quiet areas of Nigeria, not like the hustle and bustle, Lagos, busy cities in Nigeria. My town was pretty small. Most people knew everybody. I used to think that in my town in Jos, I knew everybody. It's that kind of place. Yeah. So that's really where I grew up. And my childhood just revolved around Going to school that was very close to the house. So I literally walked to school just a couple of miles from the house, come back from school. And as early as 10 years old was when I joined my father's business, like really as a child, yeah. And then you may wonder what kind of business was my father doing. It was spare parts business, motorcycle spare parts, So it's not a sin for a little girl, right? To begin with, it's not even a sin for a child, not to talk about a girl child. But for some reason, I don't know why I became the person who was more like my father's partner, more or less. I have an elder brother and an elder sister, so I'm not the first child. I have an elder brother, an elder sister. I have a younger brother, a younger sister. So I'm right in the middle of five. But somehow, I don't know how the design happened, and I started going to the shop. So I would go to the shop, I'll go to school, come back from school anywhere from maybe 1 p.m. as a child, and then I'll jump on the bus and go to the shop. I'll be there until like 6:30, 7 p.m. when we close, and then I'll come back with my dad. During holidays, the same thing. Saturdays, the same thing. So that pretty much was my childhood. My childhood was just revolved around learning the scope of business, learning how to navigate a very rough environment, learning how to stand up for myself. As a little child, usually they will bring my father's goods in very big trucks. Like there are really, really big trucks that brought the goods from where it was bought and then it was shipped down to Jos. As a child, I would have to go to offload those goods. I had to look for wheelbarrows. I pushed them to the shop. So my childhood just became me literally becoming stronger without even thinking about it. So while children were playing with dolls and watching cartoons and doing all of those things, that's not the childhood I remember. I don't even remember learning how to cook or do housekeeping as a child because I was never at home. I really was never at home. It was always the circle of the shop. You go to school, you go to the shop. When you're on holiday, you are in the shop. And that pretty much became like 10 years of my life. From the age of 10 to the age of 20, I was just within that motion of supporting the business. As of when I was 15 years old, by the time I was 15, my father could travel out of town for weeks or for a week. Maybe he was going for something. He had a business out of town, and I would be in charge of the shop. I would run the show, open the shop, keep the books, take care of business, order new goods, go put money in the bank, everything that had to do with running a business. I learned how to do that just by being my father's apprentice. That's how I see it now. Like I was an apprentice for my dad, and that was really my childhood, and it was fun. It wasn't like I was not an unhappy child. It's not like anybody was being mean to me, but I became very close to my dad and I learned a lot from him. And I guess by the time I finished high school pretty early, like 15, I was done with high school. And then I started trying to get into the university. That's a different story, right? But that's my childhood. My childhood was really just around being in the shop.
So what about school? What was school life like?
Okay. Like I mentioned, I attended roadside schools. I don't know the English word for it. I don't know if that's a correct term, but when you say roadside schools, it's more like schools that were almost like daycare, not like very serious schools. I'm first generation college student, so education was never really a big part of my own upbringing. Education was never something that was forceful or like, oh, you have to work hard to be the best in school. Or, no, it was very easy going, very casual. So I go to school and it was fun. School for me was fun. I cannot remember ever being stressed in school or anything or being so pushed to excel so much. It was just a very average school from elementary school up until when I finished high school. Was not something that was forceful or something that was like, oh, you need to read 2 hours every day, you need to study, you need to work hard, you need to pass. No, it was just more like, very casual. And I guess I always had some element of natural intelligence because I never did fail, but I was never like a stellar student. I was not top of the class. I was not top three, but I was okay. I was passing casually and going from one class to the next class. And that was it for me. Yeah. So that's how school was for me, at least up until when I finished high school.
I so like the journey though, the journey from being your dad's apprentice. And I think though during that time, the lesson that you learned about business and about relationship building is very key to what you are doing now. Okay. And also, I love the bit about you shared about school because you said that you were the first generation going to university. But when we had our conversation initially before this interview, you were saying that you were the average student. So, what really pushed and propelled you to want to go to university? Because you described yourself as an average student.
Right. Right. Even though I was an average student from a very humble background, somehow, as a child, as a very young child of 14, 15, 16, having spent a whole lot of my teenage years in the whole motion of going to the shop and coming back from the shop, I desired a better future. Like I felt like this is not the life I want permanently for myself. This is my parents' life. I'm happy to assist. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to come and help out in the shop and help to run the business. But this is not what I want. I wasn't sure what it is I wanted, at least at that point, but I just knew it was not that. And even in my young mind, I felt like my education was my salvation. I just felt like education was the only thing, like it was my only path out of that life. Think about it. My parents were very average. We were barely surviving. We were just managing. If they were buoyant enough, they would probably not put a child to go work in the shop. It was just because there wasn't a lot to get around. So we had to support each other. We had to work together. And that was okay for me. I was happy to be that person, to step into those shoes and to shoulder those responsibilities, even as a young child. But I also know that I wanted something better. I wanted a different future. I've always had a very vivid imagination. And I think it keeps me happy even up till today. I could get lost in my own imagination. I could imagine something so beautiful and I would feel as though I was already living it. So even as a child, I would imagine beautiful places. I would imagine being somewhere, doing great things and doing this and doing that. And then I could get lost reading novels and reading stories. And all of those imagination in my mind, I felt like the only gap between where I was and where I wanted to be was to get an education. So at that stage in my life, that was the propelling factor. That, yeah, there's no money, there's no family money, there's no inheritance, right? So it's not like if I served my father up until when I was 30 or 40 or 50, and probably by the time my father was retiring, I was going to inherit something. There was nothing to inherit. We were barely surviving. So I could see that even as a very young child, that was glaring to me that this was about survival. And I did not want to live my life on survival mode. I didn't want to live my entire life just penny pinching, just getting $50 and spending it on food and get another one and spend it on food, and that becomes the circle of your life. So I just knew I wanted something different. And that was just the drive.
It's a powerful lesson, though, that you shared there about the importance of legacy. And I feel legacy is key, it's essential, okay? Because that is what exactly propelled you to say, I am going to do well at school and I want to build a legacy for my children's 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 children. But who thinks like that at the age that you were at 15, 14, 13, and that you have such great insight and also foresight to know I need to do better. I need to make a change. So if we're going back to that, I remember that you were sharing about a mentor in your life that changed, the trajectory of your education, Dr. Patrick, because we're on the vein of education. Tell us about Dr. Patrick.
Okay, yeah, I never share my story without mentioning him. Not at all. Like he's always top on the list for me because, like you said, I truly do believe that he changed my life in very simple ways, but with commitment and passion and empathy and all of those things. By the time I had graduated high school, I finished pretty early, like I said. And of course, the next thing was to take the entrance exam to get into the university. So I started that motion. It's very typical. You go, you take the exam, and then you wait for the admission list to pop up. Usually it goes on online. And what we used to do in Nigeria, then you had to go to a cyber cafe, like a cafe, so that they would check. Everybody had a unique number. So they would enter your number and tell you you're successful or you're not successful, something like that. That's how the motion was. So I wrote my first exam. The exam is called JAM, Joint Admission Matriculation Board. That's it. That's the Nigerian exam that you take to get into the university. So I took that exam the first year. I went in when the admission list was out to go check the status. And then the person looked at it and said, oh, sorry, I cannot find your name on the list. You have not been admitted this year. I'm like, oh, wow. He's like, oh, don't worry, but there will be a supplementary list. Maybe your name would come in the supplementary list. That usually comes out later. I went away sad. I was waiting. Supplementary list came out. Of course, my name wasn't in it. That was the first year. Second year, rinse and repeat, the same motion. Take the exam, go back to the cyber cafe. Sorry, your name is not there. Rejected. No admission for you. Third year, rejection. Then I was going into full-blown depression. I would say that was like the ugliest period in my life. Sometimes, when people think about some of the things I've had to face as an older person and lived through, I look back at it and I feel like, no, that one was even worse. Like what I went through as that young child, because I was pretty much young in my teen years and having to go through those motions of rejections and not knowing why I was being rejected. Because I was doing well in the exam. Like I was meeting up the cutoff points. I was seeing people who did not do as well get into the university. I was seeing classmates get into the university. I was meeting them on the way and they would say nasty things to, how young people are. They would say things like, oh, you're lucky, university is so hard, you're lucky you're still chilling. It's like, what kind of luck is that? Things like that. There are some of all those undermining comments that people make. I was still at home and somebody that I was in the same class with graduated from the university. I was at home, Sophia, for 5 years, trying to get into the university. It was 5 years of rejection. So it was a long time. It was strung out. It was really like, what's really happening? But I kept going and I kept going. And eventually I was admitted. But I looked at the sheet and I saw plant science and technology. What is that? I didn't know what that was. I truly did not know what it was. It's like plant science and technology. I had never heard about the course. I wanted to do pharmacy. So from pharmacy to plant science and technology, I didn't know how to react. So it was mixed feeling. Gratitude that finally I could get into the door. I could get into the university. But then plant science and technology, what was I going to do with that? And then trust people and comments. There were people saying things like, what are you going to do when you graduate? Are you going to become a native doctor? Are you going to start? What would you do with plant sciences? Some people even kind of were suggesting to me, yeah, what, 1 more year? Why don't you try again next year? I went back to my dad and I said, Daddy, what do you think? He didn't know. He doesn't. He too, he looked at it and he's like, what do you want? I said, I don't know. I'm confused. I know this is not the course I wanted to get into do, but with all the years of delay, I don't know what I should do. And one thing my father has said to me that was so profound is that he said, maybe this is the will of God for you. Maybe there is something in this, even though we don't understand it. We don't know why you were suddenly offered this course out of the blue, but maybe there is a God somewhere who is guiding your path. And maybe you should consider going for it. Something my father always told me, even as a young child, even going through those years of rejection, my father would look at me sometimes when I would come back from receiving those rejections and I would be crying, I'll come home, I'll be so cranky. My father would say, don't worry, my child, you will change the world. You have such a bright future. He was such a hype man. My father could hype me up. Even up till today, he's one of my biggest cheerleaders. He used to think I was all that. Even as a child, he always felt like, oh, you are special. You're such a special child. Don't worry, everything is going to be fine. So I just took on my father's consolation. And of course, you've spent 5 years. You don't have the luxury of being choosy. You might as well just get on with it, right? And of course, I went into the university and I started with that course. But in my heart, there was still that unacceptance. There was still that bitterness. There was still that, this is not what I want. What am I going to do with this? So there was all those negative self-talk of, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe there's everything wrong with me. Maybe everybody was against me. The way you just feel like the whole world is against you and you tell yourself all of those things to the point that you believe it. That was the state I was. when I stepped into the University of Jos to start my education. Barely 2 weeks in the university was when I met my mentor, Dr. Patrick. And I met him by chance because in Nigeria, again, something that we do, which is different from the US system now, is that you literally have to go with your course forms to the lecturer's office for them to sign on it, for them to append their signature. So your course registrations. So if you were going to take 10 courses this semester, you have to chase down all of those lecturers that were offering those courses for them to sign on your course form. So they'll sign their signature on your course form before you can submit it to the administration to show that you were fully registered for that semester. And of course, all of us were lined up in front of his office, more than 100 of us. It was so many of us, everybody lines up and people popped in and out. Literally, people were spending less than 1 minute in the office. You just enter and it's like he looks at your course form, he signs on it, you put down your name on the list and off you go. That's it. It was people were just coming and going. And I was on the queue, just waiting for my turn. I entered the office, gave him my course form, he signed on it. Then he looked at me for whatever reason. I don't know what it was. He said, "How are you?" That was the first question he asked me. He said, "How are you?" I said, "Well, I'm fine, I'm okay." He said, "No, really, how are you?" And from there, it was a conversation that lasted more than 30 minutes with so many other students lined up in front of the door. But then it was a conversation of me going into the whole story of not wanting to be in plant sciences and all the things I've been through and all my rejections. And, it's just as though you had it all pent up. I had all of those emotions pent up and just waiting for somebody who would look to say, "I see you and I understand." That was just it. And when I shared all of those with him, he's like, "Do you know there is a lot of prospects in your course? There is so much you can do. All you have to do is to be the best at it. All you have to do is to work very hard, graduate with first class. You can go abroad. You can do this." All of those things, he was just throwing it out there. And my eyes was just opening up. It's just like a light bulb moment. "Are you for real? Are you sure?" "Yeah, you can do this. You can do that. You just need to work very hard." And it was just as though he was laying out a vision. He was just laying out those visions. And somehow I caught the vision. I believed him because of how convincing he was sounding. So it was a case of, if you say so, I'm going to try. I'm willing to believe you, because I had always desired to be better, but I didn't know how. He became the kind of mentor that was really present, even in the small things. And that shaped me totally, because I went from that average student who was struggling and didn't even know what I wanted to becoming the student who finished my first semester with a whole bunch of A's. I had a lot of A's. I think I had just 1 B and I had 1 D. And then I was so excited. This was the best result I had gotten in my entire life, because I was always the average student, cruising, never really passing, but never really failing. So suddenly I had all these A's. Out of like 11 courses, I was having like 8 or 9 A's. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to go see Mr. Patrick. "Hey, Mr. Patrick, do you see my result?" Just like a child with candy, I was so excited. And he looked at the result like, "Yeah, you did a good job, but this D, that's not really good. This B, that's not good. But I really want to see the scores. I'm not just interested in your grade. Yeah, I can see you have all these A's, but I want to see your actual scores." And I'm looking at him like, "Are you crazy now? I got an A. What else do you want?" So yeah, go back to the board, go copy your scores. I didn't even understand it. But of course, I just followed the instruction. I went back and I copied all of my scores, one after the other. This score, this score. And I brought it back to him and he was looking at it. He said, "Oh, you got 75, you got 72. In Nigeria, our grading system, 70 is an A. So from 70 to 100 is an A. And he said, if you get 70, it means you're 30% wrong." That's what it means. It means you don't know it as well as you think you do. Yeah, it may be an A may be excellent, but it still means you're 30% wrong. Sophia, that changed my mind. It changed my worldview. It changed how I saw excellence. So it was no longer about validation. It was no longer about getting people to say, "Oh, you got an A." It was about becoming a master of a subject. I went from the student who struggled, who was rejected endlessly, to graduating as overall best out of about 20,000 students, just because there was someone who was guiding, who was propelling, who was cheering, who was admonishing, someone who was correcting, someone who would listen to me ramble about all my problems, or someone who would listen to me complain. Just that presence. I should cut it down here because, like you said, the story of my life is such that if I keep going into it, I probably not be done in 2 hours, and I don't want to make your podcast longer than it needs to be.
You know what is so rich though? I'm sitting here and I'm listening to new things that you didn't share with me when we had our initial conversation. It's just so lovely and wonderful. Um, Something that I was really listening to whilst you were speaking was that your father was your number one cheerleader. And then you had Dr. Patrick, who also was your mentor. So you've had some informal mentorship from your dad, who was your
Right.
cheerleader, now Dr. Patrick. So now you're in the United States of America at university, a new country, new culture, alone. Something changed, something happened. What was it?
Oh well, it's just life, right? You go through life's motion and you go through so much. But here I am, first year into my PhD, just a couple of months, and I'm not feeling all right. I'm not sure what's wrong with me. Kept going to the hospital in and out. I wasn't really sick, but I wasn't really fine. It's just one of those weird feelings where it's just more like intuition. You feel like something is not right. But a lot went on with the diagnosis and misdiagnosis. It's a lot of story there. But after so much and through a misdiagnosis, through giving me the wrong treatment, they eventually found that I had cancer. That's something that was discovered in my first year. I was still just a first year student. I was just a couple of months into my PhD. And I was alone in this country. I was just by myself. And now I have cancer and I don't know what to do because it came as a shock. I would say it was like a very rude shock because it was so unexpected. It was right in the middle of the semester. It was my second long semester. So right in the middle of the semester, I had classes, I had started, life was going on. And as of even when I was diagnosed, I remember I was diagnosed and I had a trip booked for the next week. I had a trip. I was supposed to go to one of the top plant breeding industries here in the US that had gotten an award for. That's Koteva Agri-Science. It's one of the top two. I had an award I was supposed to go and receive. My flight was booked. Everything was, my life was moving on. And now life stops you. I have cancer. And my doctor, I was referred. I was in College Station, Texas, right? So I was referred to an oncologist in Houston. And when she looked at me, she checked everything. She said, you need a surgery like yesterday. Like I had a 7-pound tumor growing in me that was growing aggressively. And it was a misdiagnosis that triggered all of that, but it was growing aggressively. She's like, I need to book you for surgery. Everything was moving so fast. It was just like my life switched just like that. I remember the day I was diagnosed, my doctor had called me, like the doctor in the school clinic. I was going to the school clinic, right? She called me, Amaka, where are you? I'm in class. It was a Friday. I said I had another class. She said, can you come to the clinic to see me? I'm like, can I come on Monday? I have another class until 1. She said, I'll wait for you. You do your thing. I'll be waiting. When you are done, come and see me. I went there after my classes. I was already wondering, why is the medical director calling me on the phone? Like, that's too much importance. How important can I be as a student that she calls me on the phone? In my mind, I was still mulling it over, like, what's going on? But then, of course, I sat down. I could already see the somber look in her face. You could just tell there was this heavy energy in the room. I said, Dr. Mata, what is it? She said, I don't have good news. Okay. I said, get to it. I'm that kind of person, like, please get to it. Don't give me any pep talk. Don't just get to the point. I was very impatient. And she said, you have cancer. Is there anybody you can call? I was so shocked. She said, can you call anybody? I said, well, I can call Dr. Patrick. That's the only person I know in the US. But in that moment again, because everything was happening so fast, it felt as though I could not control anything. I needed to control something. I needed to feel like I had some sort of grip as to what was happening to me. And out of the blue, I looked at my doctor, the oncologist that was taking care of me, Dr. Alanis, and I said, Dr. Alanis, I received this award. I'm supposed to travel next week to Iowa to go to this company to go and receive this award and speak in a conference. Do you think I can go? And the people in the room are looking at me like, are you even crazy? Like, you have cancer and I was very serious because in my mind's eye, it's like, okay, something has to give. This is my life now. I need to find some kind of understanding as to what was happening to me. And she's like, are you serious? I say, yeah, I'm really serious. What I need is medical opinion. I don't need your personal concerns. Medically speaking, would traveling for a couple of days, I was just going to be there for 3 days. So it's like a 4-day trip. Would traveling and going for this conference, is it going to impact me medically? I want you to give a medical opinion. She's like, okay, I need to run some tests. I need to check for blood clotting and this and that, all her medical jargons. I was like, do what you need to do. I just need to know medically. And she checked. She's like, well, you already have cancer. I don't see the difference that 4 days will make. It's not going to make you have it any more or any less. If this is going to give you the will to fight, because what I need, she said something to me. She said, you can overcome whatever you're going through if you can overcome it in your mind. So I need you at your best state to be able to fight what is coming, because it's going to be very hard. So you need to kind of fight, first of all, fight it in your mind. Believe that you can win. Then you would win in the physical. And I was like, okay, thank you. That's something exciting to look forward to. And my mentor was one person I spoke to. When I said to him, I want to travel, he was like, yeah, fine, sure. You go do your thing. We'll be praying. You go come back. Every other person was like, oh, no, you shouldn't do this, that. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I went for that trip. It was beautiful. People did not even know that I had a surgery coming the following week or I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a blast, received my award, gave my talk, and I came back to Texas. I went in for my surgery. It was brutal. It was a 7-pound tumor. So if you have a 7-pound tumor in your abdomen, imagine the cuts to take that out. So recovery was brutal. Recovery was hard. But I knew that I had to channel my pain and suffering to something. I could not afford to fall apart. That was just something I knew in that moment. That I could not afford it. I couldn't fall apart. It's been so much struggle. It's been so much pain. So I made the decision that I wanted to go back to my classes to be able to move forward. I need to have a reason to live every day. I need to have a reason to be able to push myself through this difficult situation. So in that moment, as a first-year student, was when the idea was born in my mind that I was going to graduate as a valedictorian, and I was going to stand on the stage in front of more than 10,000 people to share that story of survival. That was the moment when I visualized it. And every day I held on to that vision. I would close my eyes and I would see myself standing on that stage. I would recount the story in my mind. And that was what I held on to. And that was how I was able to get through that gradual, slowly but surely, I recovered. And I went from losing 60 pounds. I had lost 60 pounds of weight in that period, but I recovered my weight. And now I'm watching my weight. I'm back to watching my weight.
You know what, Amaka? I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, wow, 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 powerful, amazing. I am just in awe of your journey and in awe of the seasons and the chapters of your life so far. What I'm really taking from this is such a powerful lesson in the self-fulfilling prophecy, the powerfulness of holding close and dear to the thing that you want in your life, for you to see it, to believe it, and then you're walking in it now. How amazing is that? How amazing and powerful is that, Amaka?
Learned in my journey, Sophia, is that the mind is very malleable. You see the mind, it's very malleable. You can trick it into believing anything, almost anything. I feel like the mind cannot differentiate between the subconscious and reality. I don't think the mind is able to make that distinction. So whatever you feed yourself, and if you can consistently feed that to yourself, somehow your mind adjusts to that for that to become your reality, even though it may not have manifested in the physical. So those are like powerful lessons that I've learned along my life journey.
I love that. I feel that because how many people would just come out of a very serious operation and then be smiling? You'd be groggy, you'd be a bit moody, a bit grumpy. I don't want to speak to anybody.
Mhm.
but you have turned it around and showing how powerful it is to have a positive attitude and mindset towards your situation. And as you said, you can trick your mind into thinking that the mind doesn't know whether something is good or bad. It's up to us as to what we feed it. Okay.
Right.
You have made the decision, as you said at the beginning to me, that you are intentional. So you made a decision that I am going to feed this situation with God's most richest blessings and positivity. And look how it has turned around. And it's something so interesting, so very, people could say it's simple, but it's not simple because us as humans make it just so difficult. But yeah, I am just in awe of your journey. Like, just imagine taking a photo of you smiling. Do you know what I mean? After your surgery.
I'll probably show you that picture. Yeah, I love that picture now because now I have it, right? It was taken just a couple of hours after I came out of surgery and I was smiling. It was such a big smile. It's like, what's even funny? What's wrong with this woman? Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think something else that helped me and a lesson I try to share with people is the ability to count your blessings in any situation. That's another big turning point for me that in any situation I find myself, I've been able to manage to convince myself that it could be worse. And I can count how it could be worse. And in doing that, it's just like an exercise I play in my mind. So I told myself, okay, now you've been diagnosed with cancer. What if you were in Nigeria? What if you had not had the opportunity to live? The healthcare in Nigeria is not what it should like. The healthcare in Nigeria and dealing with cancer, people die for far less. So that was something. And I looked again and I told myself I could have been in any state in the US, but somehow I was able to get admitted to a state where my mentor was 2 hours away. So at least it became the only family I could count on in that moment. So I could still find reasons to be grateful. And that is something that if you become intentional about, no matter what you're going through in your life, no matter what you're going through, you can look around and realize that this situation could have been worse.
I want us to also talk about how you have turned your pain into purpose. Do you know what I mean? The seasons into your life into purpose and scholar up. That's why I said when I sent the brief, I always do a little title, for my guests, and I just put amazing lady because you are such an amazing lady. So tell us about the work that you're doing now.
Scholar Up is my baby. It's my passion project. It's something that started like as an outlet. I was stressed graduate student. Graduate school is hard, Sophia. It's tough. Going through graduate school, trying to get a PhD, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of stress because you have all these deadlines. You have so much you're trying to juggle. But in that moment, I wanted to be a blessing to others. I wanted to see how I could be of help to other people. Because I've always been a people person. I always wanted to do things that had to do with people, even though by training in terms of going by discipline or academic. Okay, I went to plant sciences, to plant breeding, to PhD in horticulture. That has very little to do with people, right? In terms of you're dealing with plants, more or less. It has very little to do with coaching and personal branding and some of the things that I enjoy doing now. So in my mind, I always kept on figuring, how do I marry this? How can I find the intersection between all of this education that I have with something that truly makes me feel alive, which is connecting with people, empowering people. I'm the kind of person that I want you to be the best you can be. I want to challenge you. I want you to, rise up and feel it within yourself that I can be better. And I feel like once I'm able to transfer that to you, then you can transfer it to somebody else because somebody transferred it to me. So I believe so much in that paying it forward type of thing, given my history with mentoring and how that mentoring changed my life. But then I was thinking, where am I going to find the people? I'm in the United States, everybody around me is busy graduate students, everybody with their own problems. And that was when I showed up on LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn now just a little less than 1 year, even though sometimes people think I've been there forever. Yeah, I didn't have
Wait there, hold up a minute. Hold on, hold on, hold on. You have been on LinkedIn for, say, 12 months.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, you can literally scroll back on my profile. Yeah, that's it. I'm pretty new to LinkedIn. I'm pretty new to anything social media. I'm not really like, I was
I
never
am
really a big.
impressed. I am so impressed. I am so impressed. Okay. I am so impressed because I've seen the amount of followers that you have. I'm
Mhm.
seeing the valueness. I'm seeing
Mhm.
the valueness in your postings as well. I mean, the comments, the engagement. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I showed up on LinkedIn and I actually started my posting with just sharing bits and pieces of this and that. It was just sharing snippets from grad school life. Sometimes I share the challenge and I would share how I walked through it. And gradually that began to resonate with people. It was just even very recently that I shared my journey with cancer. I was already well established. I shared that just after I graduated, and I graduated in December. So it's even pretty new that I put out that story because I had not felt comfortable sharing that part of myself with the world, more or less. I felt like I had to reach a point of comfort where I could talk about that story without breaking down. So that I didn't even start my posting with trying to share all of those personal business, right? So my postings was just more about general life. I'll write motivational posts. I'll just encourage people. I wrote about education. And when I started doing that, and I realized that people were beginning to it was just as if I was giving them hope. So people would come to my inbox and they would ask me questions about grad school. Most people from Africa, from Nigeria, Ghana, from all across, some people from India, they were just asking me questions. And I would type and I would respond and I would type and I would respond. And the more it increased, I realized that this is not sustainable. I could not I had very little time as a grad student to do what I was doing. Like my time, I had to take care of my time. I did not have the time to respond. And whenever I didn't respond to people's comments, I would feel so bad. I would feel like, oh, wow, this person is needing help. I'm not able to support them. But then I'm one person and I have 24 hours. And that was when the vision was laid in my heart. It's like, just to see if the Holy Spirit spoke to me or God spoke to me or wherever the vision came from, I don't know. But the first idea was, it would make more sense if you can bring these people together. Now you can hold webinars and talk to 100 people, 200 people, all at the same time. It would be like 1 hour solving problems for so many people instead of using 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, responding to everybody and everybody. And that was actually where that started from all of those questions and figuring out how can I be of better service? How can I manage my time better just so that I can be of better service to all of these people who needed all this information about how they could get into grad school and how they could solve all these problems. So I just made an announcement. It was very, very, very casual. So I made a post I remember I had made, and that was my first post that ever went viral on LinkedIn. The first post I made, I said, oh, now I'm going to write modules on ways to come to US. If you wanted to come to the US as a grad student, I'm going to write it as different modules so that every day you can follow it as templates that, okay, this is the first thing you need to do, maybe about your statement of purpose, about this, all the different processes. And that post went viral as the first post, and so many people started following that journey. They were following the journey. Like I would write module 1, this. I still have that in my website. So it became like a course that I had designed. I went from module 1 to module 15, just sharing different aspects of that process. It was still not enough because now people will come and ask me questions. I can't find this module. I can't find that. Okay, this is not sustainable. I thought this was going to solve the problem. It did not. Then I created Scholar of Mentoring Academy. I was like, okay, now I can actually have a mentoring system that is structured. I could even have my people away from LinkedIn, like in a different group. We can even have Zoom sessions and we can go from there. So when I put together Scholar, and everything was on LinkedIn, believe you me, everything I was doing, I would make a post and people would respond, and so many people would follow, so many people would join the group, so many people would put in their emails, their phone numbers. We'll be having WhatsApp group. I have like a WhatsApp group for Scholar with more than 500 people in the group. I have my other group for the Elevate Your Professional Presence, close to 1,000 people in the group. And all of these people were joining on their own. It's not like I never added one person, just from making the post. So when I did that and I started the whole mentoring process, that was when I discovered another gap. It's just as if it's in the process of doing that you start seeing the problems that you could solve. I realized that most of the people that were coming to me at that point, who were students, who were trying to get into grad school, they did not know how to present themselves. They had issues with communication. They had issues with writing. They had somebody would probably give you their CV for you to review. And you wonder, is this the best way you can talk about yourself? You have so much more to give. It's an African thing. It's an African thing where we feel like we have to be humble. It's like I struggled with that, so I could recognize it. I was that student who graduated as overall best student but never said anything to anybody because you don't want to be perceived as proud. So it's like something that we grow up with where you feel like you have to have this false sense of making yourself feel small and shrinking yourself so that people will not look at you and think that, oh, she's so proud. She feels like she's all that. So I could recognize all of that. And it took me losing some important opportunities in my life for me to realize that that doesn't pay me. It's not enough to be a valuable person. I need to be able to learn the skill to communicate that value in a way that doesn't come off as arrogant, but comes off as somebody who is sure in what they're doing. It's a difference. There is just a skill. All of those things are like communication skills, personal branding skills that you could learn as a person, that you're able to communicate. You could show up as who you are. You know who you are, but it's not because you're trying to be proud. It's not because you're trying to put anybody down. And so that was the problem I recognized that I wanted to solve again. I was like, yeah, it's good. You want to get into school, but it's important for you to learn how to build your personal brand, learn how to communicate, learn how to build networks. Because I saw a lot of errors, even in the way they communicated with me. Somebody would write me an email and say, hello, Amaka, can you be my mentor? I'm like, come on. You know, things like, and you realize that they did not really know. They did not really know that there was everything wrong in this system. And I was like, okay, this is something I could definitely step into to do. And that was when the Elevate Your Professional Presence program, which has been going on now for 9 months. We're in the 9th cohort. I've managed to keep that program going every month. I've had people sign up every month. It's a 21 days program. We usually start at the big first Monday of the month. We'll graduate at the 3rd week. And it's just a process of teaching people how to show up on LinkedIn, to build their personal brand, content writing strategy, storytelling, communicating, community building. And that took off. That was so great. I ended up having people from more than 15 different countries join my cohort. People were, you know, doctors. I've had a lot of doctors and nurses and even people beyond what I was thinking from the beginning. Because you come to realize that it's not enough that people are professionals in their field. A lot of people struggle with knowing how to show up and showcase that value in a way that they can connect with other people. Visibility is a currency of its own. Being able to find that visibility and retain it for a long period of time and be valuable in your offering takes some skill. So that's the work that I started doing at Scholar Up. So at Scholar Up Mentoring Academy now, we have 2 broad, like if you ask me, who is your target audience? I will tell you it's the busy professional who is trying to create some visibility for themselves, who want to build a personal brand, who want to show up and show the values they carry to the world. And then the second group of people continue to be the people who want to come to grad school. They can build up themselves and they will know how to package themselves and show forth what they carry. And all of this came from my own personal journey.
Balancing, you know, your full-time job and as well Scholar Up. I mean, if when somebody listens to this particular episode, what would you want them to remember about your long story short?
I would say the first thing I always want people to remember about me, about my story, about themselves is that as human beings, we have a lot of power to choose. There's a lot of power that God has given to us that we can choose. You can choose how you act. And most times in life, it is easier to act yourself into feeling a certain way than to feel yourself into acting a certain way. So what you can choose is how you act. And your actions would definitely impact your feelings. But most times in life, when you decide to wait to feel like it before you do anything, you probably not make a lot of progress. So in life, you have to know that your power is in your actions. That sometimes there has to be a time when you have to force your body to go through the motions. Even if your mind is screaming a different thing, you just force your body to go through that motion, recognizing that that is what you can control. And in so doing, gradually, your mind would shift. So it's very important as human beings that we understand that life will throw its curveballs. That's not something you can control. Feeling sick, having a sick loved ones, all of those things that different people go through at different stages of their life. It's not unique to you. Don't ever live your life with the mindset that, oh, poor me, this is unique to me. No. Instead, live your life with the way I look at life now that has really helped me is that I look at every situation like, so what? This happened. So what? So what's next? So what can I do about it? That's it. That's all you can do. Don't try as much as possible not to live your life in that state of becoming pitiable. The world will pity you, but it will keep moving. That's the thing. The world is not going to stop. It's so unfair. It's super, super unfair. And the moment we recognize that the world is unfair, we begin to look out for ourselves the best way we can. Resilience is like a muscle that you build up. And when you go through those motions of surviving certain things, it serves as an evidence for you to remind yourself. So when something hits me now, I remind myself of something I've lived through. And I tell myself, okay, challenge on, game on, let's go. So that's just the kind of things that you need to build up yourself even before the day of adversity. Don't wait until things hit you and then you begin to respond or begin to react aggressively. Begin to go through your life and build up yourself in a way that you're responding to life more gracefully. You are responding to life understanding that you have a purpose. Discover that purpose. And I guess the last thing I'm going to say is that purpose is developed. Purpose is something you develop through the process of doing. You get more insight. You see the way I told you the story of Scholar Up. I did not have it figured out from day one. That's the thing. If you ever wait in your life that you have to have the full picture of everything, you probably never achieve anything. Your purpose as a human being, those vision is probably not going to be given to you as a complete vision. All you may see at a given moment may be A and B, or even just A. And then you have to be doing A. While you're doing A, you would figure out B, and then you figure out C, and then you continue in that upward climb. It makes all the difference for people to recognize that purpose is developed. It's not something that is dropped in your lap. It's not like a eureka moment sometimes that you suddenly reach that moment and say, oh, I figured out this is what I need to do. Sometimes it is through painful trial and error. It is through failing and picking yourself up. It is through rebounding. It's through just continuing and not giving up. So this is the message I want people to remember. The message of resilience, the message of not giving up, the message of believing in yourself, and most importantly, the message of choosing joy and happiness.
This is a reason why I started Long Story Short, was to hear and to provide a platform for stories like yourselves. I want to thank you, Dr. Amaka. You are, as I said, a beautiful and powerful woman, and I wish you continued success. And thank you for being on the Long Story Short couch today.